A group of kayakers has finished a 160-mile trip down the river from Mount Vernon to Marietta, all to support veterans, first responders, and mental health. Our Cassidy Fury shows us why participants say the hardest miles can also be the most healing.
A journey of 160 miles and 6 days. Paddle for Heroes started in Mount Vernon, Ohio, and this Friday they finish in Marietta. 6 days, about 30 miles a day, and 160 miles total by kayak. A trip Paddle for Heroes Vice President Joey Butts said is built around purpose, not comfort.
We get veterans and first responders involved in recreational paddle sports as a healing tool.
Paddle for Heroes is a nonprofit based in Mount Vernon, Ohio. The group's annual paddle takes them from Mount Vernon to Marietta. And while it raises awareness, organizers say it's about building a support system on the water.
Veterans and first responders have a similarity with dealing with traumatic events. We all have our own trauma that we've dealt with in relation to our jobs. So getting out here, especially this event, it's 30 miles a day. You're like just paddle. You get up, paddle. Go to sleep, get up, paddle.
This year, Christina Kirkner joined for the first time, bringing her own mission with her downriver.
So I've been a paramedic for 25 years, an ER nurse, and I paddle for first responder mental health awareness in memory of my late husband, Jeff Kirkner, who was lieutenant firefighter paramedic at the East Lake Fire Department.
Kirkner said she arrived not knowing anyone, but that didn't last long. She said the miles have a way of breaking down walls, especially among people who have seen trauma firsthand.
Just the time alone spent with people and helping set up camp, and just the camaraderie along the river, the conversations, trauma knows trauma, and we were all able to share different experiences that were very similar.
Butts said that bond is exactly the point, and by the end, it's not about who's fastest, it's about who finishes together.
And they'll start out thinking, oh man, what I get myself involved in, and by the end they're very grateful to have the experience. As you can see back in the background, we've got families, it's all smiles and hugs, and that's really the best part for me.
The group also dedicates the trip each year to fallen heroes, honoring service members and their families along the way.
This year we've dedicated the trip to Private First Class Martin out of Mount Vernon, and also Lieutenant Charles Wilkins out of Columbus.
After 160 miles, tired arms and soaked gear give way to something else. Hugs, families at the finish, and a promise for many paddlers to come back next year. In Marietta, I'm Cassidy Fury with WTAP News.